Thanks for joining us with this live conversation. My name's Brett.
I'm Renata.
And tonight we want to talk about who's in. Now, wanting to feel in, to belong, to be connected, I think is a pretty natural human experience. I think most of us have had moments where we felt like we're in, but then I think also many of us have had moments in our lives where we felt like we certainly were not in. Yeah, that was a very hearty yes.
Well, probably when you were saying we felt like we belonged, they're probably the minority in my life experience.
Yep.
And the majority, I felt like I haven't belonged.
Would you be able to just briefly share maybe one moment where you felt like I'm not in?
Look, I'll just start at the beginning, like just really at school and even in my family, you know, I was a bit shy and more of an introvert. Well, I still am an introvert. And being surrounded by a lot of extroverts, I felt like I didn't belong. And I guess some of that was just because I felt like, well, I'm not like them, so I don't belong. But also from others to me saying I didn't belong because I wasn't the same as them and I didn't like the same things or behave the same in situations, you know, because I was shy and quiet and they were loud and out there.
So I think it's challenging when you feel I don't belong, but then it's confronting to have people say, you don't, wow.
Yeah.
That's tough. For me, I'll share a moment, and this was probably one of the first times that I had a strong sense that I didn't belong. I was touring Zimbabwe actually with a couple of friends, and we went to a town called Bulawayo, and we went and watched a jazz band actually, and these old guys, like they looked as old as the ground as we were standing on, and barely made it up on stage. And then once they started playing, they just, it went off. Just so good. Under fluorescent lights, no less. So you really had to tune in to the music. But then after that, we decided we'd go out to this club. And in contrast to the fluorescent lights, as we walked in, it was very dimly lit. And I felt like this club held about 200, maybe 300 people. And so we were just standing there, enjoying the music, enjoying each other's company. And after a while, I felt curious. I'd have a look around because we sort of just stayed in one corner. And I did like a lap of this club. And I came back, and one of my friends at the time, we called him Foxy, and I said, Foxy, do yourself a favour, just have a quick walk around. And he goes, what? And I said, no, just have a quick walk around. And so he did a lap, and he comes back and he goes, I think we're the only white guys in here. And I said, yeah. And there was no threats. There was no intimidation. You know, everyone was quite friendly, quite happy. But that was probably the first time in my life where I had felt in the cultural minority, where I could not speak the language. So if they don't want to communicate to me, I had nothing. And even though there was certainly nothing malicious about it, I was just very aware of the difference. And for some people, I guess that's their experience every day. You're just very aware of the difference, and you become very self-conscious, very aware. And psychologists will tell us that wanting to belong is a significant part of what makes us feel comfortable within ourselves. You know, and as we've shared ours, and you're watching this, perhaps you have a story comes to mind where you felt like you didn't belong. And sometimes they are dramatic moments, sometimes they are moments that quietly build, and you just have this realization. And we move through this world, and it feels like the world that we are in is moving more towards that. That we are moving to a world where everyone's just building their own little walls, and if you have this idea, or you dress this way, or you like this particular one thing, come in, otherwise just go out. You don't belong. And I think it's great when people share a common interest. But I don't want to end up in a world where we're
All the same.
well, and all separate.
Oh, yeah.
And I think those two things go hand in hand, don't
Well,
they?
because you were saying, like if you're just building your own little group,
Because
it's exactly the same as
if
you.
you're not the same, then you're out.
Yeah.
And the only way to be in is to be the same.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think there is another way. I think Jesus shows us that there is another way. And I think part of the problem that we find ourselves in is that whether you're a person of faith or not, we can meet our natural need to belong. And it's beautiful, when you see a child that is loved by their parents. It's a beautiful thing. When you see a group of friends who welcome one another and say, no, this is your place. Like, you feel free. It's a beautiful thing. I think the problem comes when we take that very natural need, that deep need to belong, to connect, and we satisfy it by pushing other people out.
Yeah.
And I've seen that happen. I've played in footy teams where if you wanted to belong, you just had to find someone who wasn't quite as quick as you, and then you oh, look how slow you are, or someone who was not quite as skillful as you, and football clubs, you played in grades, and if you were in first grade, there was kind of this pressure to socialise with the first graders, otherwise you were out. Because you weren't in, and we can sometimes do that. And when I was doing youth work, you'd see kids who carrying a lot of hurt, and the way that they formed a group was by excluding people that they could find a weakness, push them away. And unfortunately, that's not only restricted to football fields and sports grounds, playgrounds. Perhaps you've experienced that in your life and your workplaces. But Jesus actually says, look, we all belong. And it's not because we're pushing people out. We want to just draw a bit of inspiration here from the scriptures. I'm reading from the book of Matthew chapter 5, and it says this: one day as Jesus saw the crowds gathering, he went up on a mountainside and sat down. His disciples gathered around him, and he began to teach them. And he goes on to say this: God blesses those who are poor, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. God blesses those who mourn, for they will be comforted. God blesses those who are humble, for they will inherit the whole earth. God blesses those who hunger and thirst for justice, for they will be satisfied. God blesses those who are merciful, for they will be shown mercy. God blesses those whose hearts are pure, for they will see God. God blesses those who work for peace, for they will be called the children of God. God blesses those who are persecuted for doing right, for the kingdom of heaven is theirs. God blesses you when people mock you and persecute you and lie about you and say all sorts of evil things against you because you are my followers. Be happy about it. Be very glad, for a great reward awaits you in heaven. And remember, the ancient prophets were persecuted in the same way. I'm just going to finish this thought here. He says, you are the salt of the earth. What good is salt if it has lost its flavour? Can you make it salty again? It will be thrown out and trampled underfoot, worthless. You are the light of the world, like a city on a hilltop that cannot be hidden. No one lights a lamp and then puts it under a basket. Instead, a lamp is placed on a stand where it gives good light to those in the house. In the same way, let your good deeds shine for all to see, so that everyone will praise your Heavenly Father. Now, that's a bit longer than we usually read here. But what I want to focus on is that same question is who is in? And right at the start here, we see two things that in this particular text, the writer is telling there are two groups involved in here. One is the crowds, and the other one
is the people who are following Jesus.
Close disciples. Yes. Now, and I just want to briefly have a look at those two and see if we can make some kind of connection between these two groups of people and our lives today. And so when we start off and we look at the crowds, now I'm sure you've been a part of a crowd. What's the biggest crowd that you've been a part of?
I don't know, probably music festivals that I've been to. I don't know numbers, but...
No worries. 108,000. Australia played the All Blacks. It was incredible. Big crowds. And yet, when we look at what's going on here, before this event happens, Jesus goes through some stuff. And we know that he gets baptized by his cousin, according to what Matthew tells us. And then he's led by God into the wilderness, very challenging situation there. He then comes out of those two key experiences and starts to speak to people. And basically his message is this, that change your mind, that you can experience the influence of God in your life right now.
Yeah.
And so he takes that message, but what he does is he takes it from where he is, which is kind of close to the center of power, the center of culture for his nation, and takes it north. And he goes into these regions, some of them that are kind of considered across the border, a region called the Decapolis, which had like a different cultural influence. It was not Jewish, which is where Jesus was. It's a region where even the ruling Romans kind of said, you guys do what you like over there. We're just kind of going to let you go. So it was a bit of a loose region. He then went north and he went into this place around up the north lake called Galilee, but it was known as Galilee of the foreigners. So there was no cultural purity there. Jesus was moving to these people who mingled with foreign nations, with Phoenicians and Syrians back in the day, and that's where he took it. And it wasn't only his message that he took, but this new way of being. And so we see, and you said this morning as we're having this conversation, what was Jesus doing as he took this message away from the center of power?
Yeah, he'd been healing people from all kinds of things, whether it was physical, mental, emotional. He was doing that, bringing wholeness, and people were drawn to him.
Yeah, and so these are the crowds.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, this particular guy, Matthew, he records it earlier and he talks about this group of people being the group of people who lived in darkness. He said, and that's a picture of people who have ignored the source of life and light, who have ignored their God. And he's saying, so these people, they're not the people you go to, they're the people who are out. And yet, they're the crowds that are gathered around Jesus. They are the crowds that Jesus actually gives this message to. And I wonder, what's your experience of dealing with people who are out? We had a friend around this table this morning sharing a story. He's got a guy who comes through his street, and where we live, you can put your drink containers, drink bottles, your cans in a recycling bin, and the government will take that away. A lot of people use that opportunity and they just fish out everything they can that's recyclable, and then they take it to a recycling point and they earn themselves a bit of extra cash. And one of our friends sitting around this table said this morning, I saw this guy who I'd seen the other day, and he just said, so I wanted to talk to him.
Yeah.
I don't know how you feel about that. For some of us, that's a nerve-wracking experience. Someone who's different to us, different socio-economic background. It can be daunting to deal with someone who is different. There's a reason why we like to just silo ourselves in our little silos of sameness, because it's comfortable. And yet what we see here is Jesus is saying, I'm not about the silo of sameness. I'm going to everyone.
Yeah.
To everyone. Now, the second group of people that you mentioned were
the people who needed help, who were healing, needed healing.
Well, you said all that, and you said a lot of good stuff, but you also said that the group of people who Jesus called his followers.
Oh, yes, when we were in that, but the ones who he had chosen.
Yeah,
the other ones had just come to him because of the things that he'd done. But the other group were actually people that he had chosen to share in the ministry that he was
now,
doing. So
I don't know. I'm putting you on the spot here, but at this point, Matthew's told the story of really how 4 of those people had started to follow Jesus, this kind of wandering preacher who was walking around. Off the top of your head, what have you got about that origin story?
Well, for some of them, they were fishermen and they were just working their jobs, and Jesus came along. Come follow me. I'm going to give you a new life and a new job, really. And they went, all right, and started following him.
It's very, very true. Now, I don't know what your employment situation is like. I don't know. I run my own business. Renata is a key part of that, as well as juggling 4 bundles of energy. I don't know when was the last time you took a job where the salary was undisclosed, where the benefits package was not revealed. But when these 4 were invited to follow this wandering rabbi, there was no money in it. There's no promise of anything. Matter of fact, the story is told that they left their family's business, that they left their family's household and just walked around the country following this guy, relying on handouts. Why would you do that? As you sit here right now, what could possibly persuade you to leave your job, to leave your home, to leave your family behind? Not much for you.
Well, no, but I'm thinking about times when I have felt like, I left the security of work for the uncertainty, and that's because I felt that, well, maybe Jesus was offering me what he offered them, that it was a different kind of life, like to join him in the work that he was doing. And I think they had seen and heard some of the things that he was doing and went, I want to be a part of that.
Yeah.
Even in the unknown of how it was all going to turn out.
Yeah. We've got the outsiders who are drawn in, but then we're also talking to the insiders who've stepped out. And I just want to run through this. Like, if you look at this, when Jesus is saying, I'm talking to the poor, he's talking to this crew of people who've gathered around him. They were poor.
Yeah.
No money, no hope of income. They were poor. When he talks about those who mourn, a lot of them, as they left, their family said, see you later.
Yeah.
You're betraying me. You're ruining the family retirement plan. Go, don't come back. And they were mourning the loss of their family. As we keep going down this. A lot of these people were people who were oppressed, who were living under military rule, and they wanted to see a day when justice would be done. These people who hungered and thirst for righteousness. And he says, look, there's conflict here. Some of you have tried to be reconciled with your families. It's not worked, but don't give up working for peace. And specifically, when Jesus says, God blesses you when you are mocked because of me, he is speaking to those who were in and who stepped out. And it's to those who are on the outside and Jesus is inviting in, and to those who were in but have now stepped out, that Jesus says, it's you who are the salt of the world. It is you who are going to bring light. Don't lose your outside sense as you're invited in. Don't forget who you are, those of you who were in and stepped out. And as we come to this point of faith, what is your story? Do you look back on your life and say, I've been on the outside? Are you someone who reflects on your life and says, you know what, I felt like I was in, but I've stepped out? Because in this moment, Jesus says, yours is the kingdom of heaven. You are the ones who are going to change the flavour of the world. You are the ones who are going to bring light into dark places. And I recognise that if we've felt like we are on the outside, that it can feel like we are still in the dark. That when you feel like I've been in and you've stepped out, that you can feel like, hang on, who turned the lights off? And yet we want to invite you into a moment that will change your perspective. Because when you encounter the love and the power of Jesus in your life, the lights come on. It's not that you feel like your flavour doesn't match, but you change the flavour of those around you. And so we want to invite you to have that encounter and to take a step. Perhaps the first one, this is a turning point on a long journey for you. But to simply say, Jesus, I give you my life. Give me your life. And in this moment, we bring ourselves and all that we are. And we just say, Jesus, I want you. I want that blessing. I want to be someone who changes the flavour of what's around me. I want to be someone who seeks justice. I want to be someone who brings light to dark places. Jesus, I choose you. And if that's the decision that you're willing to make right now, we want to invite you to just pray this short and simple prayer to simply say, Jesus, I give you my life. Give me your life. Let's pray together now. Jesus, I give you my life. Give me your life. And if you just prayed that, we would love to pray with you. We'd love to help you take whatever the next step is for you. So please drop us a comment, send us a DM. We look forward to hearing from you soon. God bless you.
Bye.